Imagine a software firm so successful at launching new products that it completely breaks its own sales process. Every new feature gets a new name, and every acquisition adds a new logo, until the company is drowning in a sea of disconnected identities. Internally, this creates gridlock. When the portfolio becomes BIS-bloated, even the firm's own employees cannot confidently figure out which product to recommend to which customer. Externally, the damage is worse. Faced with a confusing menu of overlapping options, buyers inevitably seek clarity elsewhere, defecting to competitors with simpler offerings. These brands fail because they operate as isolated silos, aggressively competing for internal resources rather than functioning as a unified team. Fixing this requires a transition from chaos to architecture. An organization must define precise positions for each asset, enforce disciplined funding models, and ruthlessly trim the excess. An unmanaged brand portfolio actively bleeds capital through wasted effort and lost sales. Building a strategic brand architecture is a survival imperative for any growing business. To organize a portfolio, we first have to identify the driver role, meaning we must determine which specific brand in the transaction actually triggers the customer's decision to buy. When a company launches or acquires a new offering, it must calculate the exact structural distance that new offering needs from the parent company. We map this variable distance on a brand relationship spectrum. On the far right of this spectrum is the branded house, or the master brand strategy. Here, the parent brand acts as the sole driver of the purchase decision. BMW operates this way. Whether a customer evaluates a 3 Series or a 7 Series, the primary value is derived directly from the BMW name. This maximizes marketing efficiency, though it carries high risk. If a new offering clashes with the parent brand's established reputation, it dilutes the entire house. Moving slightly to the left, the scale locks on to subbrands. These assets stretch the master brand into new product categories while retaining the parent's core equity. When Toyota launched the Prius, the sub-brand borrowed Toyota's reputation for reliability, but it established its own distinct identity around hybrid technology. That specific identity then redefined Toyota's credibility as a modern innovator. Further left on the spectrum are endorsed brands. Here, the master brand shrinks to the background. It provides foundational credibility, but gives the new brand the required space to build an entirely distinct personality. Finally, on the far left is the house of brand strategy. In this model, the parent corporation and the product are completely detached. Procter & Gamble uses this structural independence to dominate specific niches. They sacrifice corporate economies of scale so that a brand like Head & Shoulders can target dandruff, while Pantene targets shine, ensuring no overlapping messaging confuses the consumer. Assigning an asset to the correct position on this spectrum ensures the right brand does the heavy lifting while insulating the parent company from unnecessary risk. Positioning the brands is only the first step. The architecture collapses if a company relies on institutional inertia, where legacy products automatically consume the majority of the marketing budget simply because they always have. Capital must be deliberately channeled into an elite tier at the top of the funnel, called strategic brands. These specific assets require disproportionate, aggressive funding to dominate their categories.
Within this top tier, resources split into 2 streams. Current power brands are the massive revenue drivers sustaining the business today, while future power brands may have small sales now but represent high projected market dominance. A linchpin brand serves as the structural anchor for a future business area. A proprietary technology platform or a branded loyalty program operates as a linchpin. By securing a base of highly committed users, it controls critical future market segments that the company's other products can later exploit. Once the strategic tier is funded, capital moves to the lower priority utility brands. Here, the absolute necessity is restricting their access to capital. This includes flanker brands, specialized, low-investment defensive tools deployed solely to block cheap competitors from eating into the main portfolio's market share. It also includes cash cow brands. These are mature assets, sitting in stagnant markets, requiring near zero marketing investment to maintain their baseline sales. The sole strategic purpose of a cash cow is to provide liquidity. The capital it generates is pulled away and redirected upwards to feed the future power brands. Treating all brands equally guarantees total organizational stagnation. Sustainable growth requires the discipline to deliberately starve utility assets to overfund the strategic ones.
Even with strict funding models, unchecked portfolio expansion inevitably creates overbranding. The sheer volume of names and logos creates friction that paralyzes new product launches. To clear this friction, leadership must execute a mandatory objective portfolio audit to identify and eliminate the hidden resource drains. We evaluate each asset using a strict triage matrix. First, we plot the strength of the brand equity on one axis against the raw business strength, meaning its current profitability and scale, on the other. Then we assess strategic fit. This heat map highlights whether the asset aligns with the organization's future vision and whether its brand equity is strong enough to be transferred to other products. Once the audit is complete, execution must be swift. Brands that fail the evaluation and drain resources must be aggressively sold off or shut down. If the underlying product is viable but the brand is weak, the merge option is deployed. The equity from multiple standalone products is rolled into a single, highly efficient master brand. Alternatively, you use the downgrade option. The failed brand is stripped of its independent status and reduced to a simple functional descriptor under an existing product line. Rigorous pruning removes the structural friction that drags down growth, clearing the path for strategic brands to accelerate. Stepping back, we can now look at the entire corporate portfolio not as a collection of historical accidents, but as an engineered system. By calculating the exact structural distance, allocating resources strictly by priority, and actively auditing away market confusion, the organization transforms. The chaotic web of isolated silos becomes an integrated, frictionless ecosystem where every asset executes a defined job. This structure produces shared brand equity that lowers the cost of customer acquisition, secures massive operational cost efficiencies, and provides the market with total clarity. Effective leadership requires engineering a lasting brand architecture that adapts to changing markets. A managed brand ecosystem drives a level of market impact that standalone brands can